So imagine this. One of Europe's greatest prehistoric treasures is in Scotland. But for the last 50 years, it's been buried. On purpose. Yeah, you heard that right. This is the incredible story of the Cochno Stone. And trust me, it's an ancient mystery with a very modern and super controversial twist.
Okay, feast your eyes on this. This is it, the Cochno Stone. It's found just outside Glasgow, and it is, without a doubt, one of the most important pieces of Neolithic art in all of Europe. And get this, at 5,000 years old, it's actually older than the pyramids of Giza. Mind-blowing, right?
Which brings us to the big question, the real head-scratcher here. If this stone is so priceless, why on earth would modern authorities deliberately hide it? We're talking burying it under hundreds of tons of soil. It just doesn't make sense, or does it? To figure that out, we've got to go back and understand what the stone is all about.
You see, the Cochno Stone isn't some one-off thing. It's actually the star player in this much, much bigger story of ancient rock art that you can find all over the Scottish landscape. I mean, from the lowlands all the way up to the highlands. So, these carvings have a name. They're called cup and ring marks. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. You've got these abstract designs, usually a central kind of cup-shaped hollow, and then it's surrounded by these beautifully carved concentric rings. Now, you find this kind of art all over the ancient world, but for some reason, Scotland has an absolutely incredible concentration of it. And what's really fascinating, what gets me, is that these markings are almost completely abstract. You won't find any drawings of animals or people, it's just these mesmerizing geometric patterns. And what do they all mean? Well, that is one of archaeology's biggest, most tantalizing questions. We just don't know. Okay, so there are lots of examples of this art out there. But, and I mean this, none of them compare to the sheer scale and complexity of the Cochno Stone. This thing is the undisputed masterpiece, the main event. First off, it was created way back around 3000 BC. That's 5,000 years ago. Just let that sink in. Then there's the size. We're not talking about a small rock here. This thing is a massive gritstone outcrop, about 13 by 8 meters, covering almost 100 square meters. It's like a giant natural canvas. And on that canvas, well, that's where it gets really wild. There are more than 100 distinct carvings, cup and ring marks, spirals, you name it. It's one of the biggest, most complex collections of this kind of art anywhere on the planet.
But here's the thing, the stone's ancient mystery is honestly matched by its modern saga. I mean, how it went from the celebrated discovery to a buried secret, well, it's a story of good intentions, some pretty serious unintended consequences, and one man's very controversial quest for answers.
So let's meet the main character in this modern drama, Ludovic McClellan Mann. He was this, well, eccentric and incredibly passionate amateur archaeologist who became totally obsessed with the Cochno Stone back in the 1930s. He was absolutely convinced that its symbols held some kind of deep cosmological meaning, and he was going to prove it no matter what. All right, so here's the timeline. The stone was first officially recorded way back in 1887, but things didn't really get interesting until 1937, when Mann decided to take his theories to the stone itself. His work made it a huge attraction, but that fame came at a very steep price. So steep, in fact, that by 1965, the authorities felt like they had no other choice. They had to bury it to save it from, well, from us. And you can see exactly what he did right here. In 1937, in what you might call a burst of, let's say, questionable creativity, he painted the ancient carvings with white oil paint to make them pop. Then, he overlaid the entire thing with this spectacular grid of colored lines, all to test his theories about astronomy and eclipses. Wild, right? Now, his theories were eventually disproven, but his work brought a ton of media attention. Suddenly, the Cochno Stone was famous, but as crowds flocked to see it, people started, well, they started adding their own carvings. We're talking names, initials, dates, all carved right into the soft rock. So the great irony is that the very act meant to understand its meaning was leading directly to its physical destruction. And so, that was it. The stone was buried. For 51 years, it just laid there, hidden, becoming this kind of local legend sleeping beneath the earth. That is, until 2016. A team from the University of Glasgow decided it was finally time to wake it up, even if it was just for a little while. And this comparison is just perfect. It really shows the stone's whole journey through time. On one side, you've got Mann's bold, totally analog investigation. And on the other, you see the super careful, high-tech approach of modern archaeology reconnecting with that exact same surface more than 50 years later.
What a difference.
So, this 2016 project was basically a race against time. The team only had a few weeks to do everything. First, they had to carefully remove all that soil. Then, they had to gently clean the surface using thousands of liters of water. And the most important part? They used cutting-edge laser scanning and something called photogrammetry to create a perfect 3D digital model like a digital twin of the stone. And then, once they had all that data safely captured, they had to bury it all over again.
So, yep, this stone is once again hidden from view, but this time it's different. The 2016 excavation gave us something that lasts forever, a digital ghost of the stone. This lets us study it in incredible detail without ever putting the original at risk. Which, of course, brings us right back to that original mystery. What in the world did these symbols mean? I mean, the theories are all over the place. Were they maps of the land, or maybe the stars? Were they some kind of territorial markers? Or maybe sites for religious rituals? The cool thing is that 3D model now lets researchers from all over the world analyze the carvings, searching for clues to this 5,000-year-old puzzle.
And really, this gets to the heart of the modern part of the story. The Cochno Stone is a classic preservation dilemma, right? If you let people see it and touch it, you risk destroying it. But if you hide it away forever, that feels like a huge loss. So this digital record, it's the compromise. It allows for super detailed study, and you could even create a perfect replica for people to see, all while the real deal rests safely underground. You know, Dr. Kenny Brophy, the archaeologist who led that dig, he summed up this tough choice just perfectly. He said the whole experience was really emotional. I mean, imagine getting to touch this incredible piece of history only to have to be the one to bury it again. But he said, for now, it's the only way we can be sure it survives for future generations.
So, the story of the Cochno Stone really leaves us with a huge question for our time, doesn't it? As technology gets better and better, we get all these new ways to experience the past. But it forces us to ask a really tough question. If our greatest, most fragile treasures have to be hidden just to survive, then how do we best share their powerful stories with the world?